If you've been wondering where your tax dollars are actually going in Washington state, this story is a case study in what happens when government loses control of the basics. We're talking about an agency entrusted with protecting vulnerable children that can't retain its own employees, can't secure its own facilities, can't meet critical insurance deadlines, and can't account for tens of millions of taxpayer dollars. While state leaders warn of a $15 to $16 billion budget deficit and ask taxpayers to brace for difficult choices, one agency appears to be wasting money through preventable mistakes, administrative failures, and systematic mismanagement. Today we're breaking down how the Washington Department of Children, Youth, and Families reached this point, what it means for public safety, why taxpayers could be on the hook for millions that insurance should have covered, and whether this is simply a series of isolated mistakes or evidence of a government agency that's fundamentally lost its way. From Seattle to Los Angeles, this is Left Coast News. No apologies, just the truth. Washington state is bleeding cash out of its back door, and the agency meant to protect the state's most vulnerable children is leading the hemorrhage. A compounding crisis of structural failure, extreme frontline turnover, criminal corruption, and multi-million-dollar administrative blunders has pushed the Washington Department of Children, Youth, and Families, DCYF, to the brink. As lawmakers scramble to stitch together a staggering $15 billion to $16 billion statewide budget deficit over the next 4 years, investigations reveal that DCYF has routinely mismanaged taxpayer dollars while failing to keep its own facilities secure. From basic administrative oversight to maximum security prison control, the mega agency is facing total operational collapse. The frontline revolving door. The crisis is most visible on the floors of the state's juvenile rehabilitation facilities. According to a scathing report from the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee, 47% of DCYF's frontline staff, including security officers, counselors, and managers, quit within their first year of employment. During focus groups with state auditors, frontline workers revealed that they are walking off the job because they feel unsafe, unprepared, and unsupported. Workers cited dangerously understaffed units leading to severe burnout, non-competitive salaries that lag behind adult corrections, and local law enforcement, and a bait-and-switch hiring process that fails to provide a realistic understanding of the daily physical dangers of the job. While DCYF leadership has attempted standard administrative tweaks such as adjusting shift schedules and offering modest pay adjustments, JLARC noted that frontline pay remains below par. The result is an agency caught in a destructive loop, losing institutional memory, relying on a skeleton crew of raw recruits, and leaving volatile facilities vulnerable to chaos. The pressure cooker at Green Hill School. Nowhere is this frontline collapse more dangerous than at Green Hill School in Chehalis. The maximum security facility, which houses male offenders up to age 25, serving time for violent felonies, has transformed from a rehabilitation center into an institutional nightmare. The rotating door of underpaid, undertrained personnel has directly eroded internal security, paving the way for systematic corruption and criminal misconduct. Local police and state prosecutors are drowning in the fallout, logging over 117 internal investigations at Green Hill in a single year alone. Smuggling and sexual exploitation. The contraband ring. Former security officers have been arrested and indicted by federal grand juries for taking bribes via Cash App to smuggle methamphetamines, marijuana, and iPhones to violent inmates. Fired employees have even returned to the gates as DoorDash drivers, with one recently caught dropping off a food order concealing a full pound of THC wax. The corruption hit a stunning low when multiple female staff members were exposed for engaging in sexual relationships with violent inmates. In one case, a guard unlocked a cell door during dawn lockdown hours, guiding a double murder convict to a windowless closet to record a sexual encounter on a contraband cell phone. Another 53-year-old corrections officer was booked into Lewis County Jail on multiple counts of custodial sexual misconduct after being caught on security footage engaging in lengthy sexual encounters with a 20-year-old inmate in a cleaning closet. When a depleted workforce loses control of the floor, sophisticated criminal networks step into the vacuum. Inmates are effectively running operations from inside their cells, while the raw staff dropped onto the floor remain utterly unprepared to handle the threat. Financial negligence in the $80 million deadline blunder. While frontline operations fracture, DCYF's top-tier bureaucracy is managing a parallel financial disaster. State tort liability payouts reached a record $500 million, heavily driven by child abuse and negligence lawsuits hitting DCYF. In May, the state agreed to a massive $80 million settlement for two Lakewood siblings, Leo and Matilda Strode. The children suffered horrific, permanent, life-altering injuries after DCYF caseworkers repeatedly left them in the care of their drug-addicted biological parents, completely ignoring explicit court orders. Matilda was left quadriplegic, deaf, blind, and mute. An investigation revealed that the state carries excess liability insurance precisely to cover catastrophic, paying $16 million a year in premiums. However, to access the coverage, DCYF bureaucrats were legally mandated to notify their insurance carriers within a strict 81-day deadline. Well, they waited 125 days. Because the agency missed the deadline by more than 40 days, at least one major excess insurance provider issued a formal written notice denying coverage entirely. Washington taxpayers are now completely on the hook for an $80 million bill that insurance should have paid, all because of a routine paperwork delay. The $37 million childcare black hole. The fiscal bleeding doesn't stop with legal settlements. A state auditor's office single audit exposed a complete lack of internal financial controls over federal childcare funds. Auditors estimated that DCYF handed out $37 million in questionable, unverified payments to childcare providers. The state investigation revealed that DCYF has zero prepayment controls. Zero. The agency distributes millions in taxpayer dollars without reviewing attendance records or verifying required provider signatures before the checks go out, relying instead on slow back-end audits that rarely recover the missing funds, stripping early learning to balance the books. To cope with its own mismanagement and the multi-billion-dollar state deficit, the DCYF is balancing its books by cutting services to Washington's youngest citizens. The agency has implemented severe rollbacks across its core early learning programs. Funding stripped for low-income infant and toddler preschool slots. Frozen expansions that were legally intended to open up childcare subsidies to middle-income families. Early childhood equity grants slashed. Funding stripped or heavily restricted for dual language and trauma-informed care programs. The structural failure. Critics argue that DCYF is a fundamentally broken experiment. Created in 2018 under the political promise of a holistic mega-agency, it merged child welfare, early learning, and maximum security juvenile corrections under one roof. One of Jay Inslee's big brain moments. In reality, it created an unmanageable 5,200 employee monster because leadership is constantly putting out fires in the foster care system or trying to smooth over catastrophic legal settlements. Specialized divisions like juvenile rehabilitation are starved of oversight, proper funding, and security. Washington taxpayers are effectively paying twice, first by losing vital preschool slots for their children, and second by footing the multi-million-dollar bill for administrative incompetence, unverified overpayments, and a rotating frontline workforce that is fleeing a broken system. The tragedy here isn't just the money, it's what the money represents. Every dollar wasted on preventable lawsuits, paperwork mistakes, fraudulent payments, and institutional dysfunction is a dollar that isn't protecting children. isn't supporting honest frontline employees, and isn't helping the families these programs were created to serve. The men and women working the floor at places like Green Hill deserve leadership that equips them to succeed, not one that leaves them understaffed, undertrained, and vulnerable. The children caught in the foster care system deserve competent case management, not bureaucratic failures that can have life-altering consequences. And Washington taxpayers deserve an agency that treats every public dollar with the same care they have to use when managing their own household budgets. At some point, mistakes were made stops being an excuse. When the same patterns of poor oversight, missed deadlines, high turnovers, security failures, and financial mismanagement keep repeating year after year, it becomes a leadership problem. The question now is whether state leaders are willing to make the difficult structural changes needed to fix what's broken, or whether taxpayers will simply be asked to write another bigger check while expecting a different result. Because accountability isn't about scoring political points, it's about making sure government actually does the job it's asking you to pay for. Well, is it any surprise? Everything this state bureaucracy tries to do is either riddled with fraud or incompetence or both. And we're paying for it. When are we going to demand that these bureaucrats do better with our money? All this wasted money, you know? I can't wait to look and see how much of this budget deficit is fraudulent, paid taxpayer money, your hard-earned money. DCYF should not be over all these agencies. Juvenile rehabilitation should be under Department of Corrections, where it belongs. I worked in one of these facilities for a while, many years ago, Maple Lane. And it had the worst of the worst mentally ill, sex offender, juvenile offenders. We weren't allowed to call them inmates. We had to call them students. We had to call the facility a school. I mean, it was a school, but it was also a correctional facility. They were there because they committed crimes. But of course, we couldn't talk about that, couldn't say anything about that. This is the way the state approaches these things. In some sort of fantasy world, rainbows and unicorns, whatever. It's time that we demand that these things are looked at for what they are and ran responsibly. All these state agencies are out of control spending our money. That's why we're in a deficit. Overspending, misspending. You got a bunch of idiots at the wheel, basically. So tell me what you think. I mean, it's just another... I could talk about stories like this every day. There's so many of them. Are you tired of it yet? If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person we built this channel for. Left Coast News exists to cut through the noise and bring you straightforward analysis of the stories shaping Washington, the Pacific Northwest, and beyond. If you found this video valuable, please subscribe and follow us wherever you get your content, including YouTube, Rumble, Brighteon, BitChute, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, X, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you'd like to help support independent journalism, you can also join us on Patreon. Patreon is free for now. You'll find the link in the description below. And if you think this story matters, share it with your friends and family. That's one of the biggest ways you can help this channel grow. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you agree with this analysis, or do you see it differently? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching Left Coast News.